In a world where barriers often hinder progress, the inspiring question follows this remarkable journey of one Latina navigating the tech landscape. How can technology truly be a force for inclusion and change? Join us for this lively conversation with Elaine Montilla, a trailblazing Latina who has redefined leadership in tech. Welcome to PhD with Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by our guest Elaine Montilla. Topic: Breaking Walls, Building Bridges, a Latina's Journey in Tech. Episode 157 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle. Because empathy is my motto, and empathy is critical when you're breaking walls and building bridges. Now let's go back to our topic, Breaking Walls, Building Bridges, a Latina's Journey in Tech. In this episode, we will delve into the significance of identity and how experiences as Latina immigrant and member of the LGBTQ plus community have shaped her perspectives to leadership and inclusion. Elaine will also introduce five minority, and she's a returning guest. So those of you who want to delve into a little bit deeper into Elaine's journey can check our previous episode as well. Let's celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with us and learn how Elaine's journey can inspire you to drive meaningful change in your career and community. So, Elaine, where in the world are you today?
Thanks for having me. First of all, I'm excited that we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, which I personally celebrate all year round, but it's good to have a month dedicated to us in addition to the whole year. I am actually home. I'm in New York. I'm based in New York, and I am happy to be with you today.
Oh, thank you, Elaine. That's so sweet of you because just 2 months ago we were celebrating ringing the bell on the floor of New York Stock Exchange, and we could have this vibrant community of not just white blokes talking to white blokes. So, how your identity as a Latina immigrant and LGBTQ plus member has shaped your leadership style?
Yes, that's such a great question, Beata. And I remember during your intro, you mentioned empathy. And I can tell you, especially as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, empathy plays a huge part in my leadership style, along with resilience and inclusivity. Coming from an underrepresented background has given me a new perspective that maybe a lot of people don't have because of the challenges that I face. And it's one of the reasons I founded 5X Minority. I want to make sure that I create always environments where all voices are heard and valued. I understand the importance of authenticity, and I often encourage others to be themselves. I can tell you, even in my recent position as a CTO, I make sure that I spent a whole month with open office hours so that anyone in the technology team can come in and talk to me and say hi. I don't like divisions, and I don't like people to feel like the CTO or the CIO are 20 levels, on top of me, and I have no way of reaching them. So I wanted to make sure that I can open that space so that they know that they can always come to me and that they are the reason that I'm there. I usually, when I have meetings, I pay attention to the people that are speaking because I know that for me, that is something that often did not happen. People did not notice that I wasn't contributing and I wasn't sharing my ideas. And there is so much value on having different perspectives and different voices at the table. And so I want to make sure that everyone can see that they could be themselves in front of me, and that it is a journey that we all take together. And I'm part of that journey with them.
Part of that journey, however, your journey was not a typical journey. There are some misconceptions and stereotypes, and one of them is that Hispanics don't value education. And looking at you, I just think about how you are not only valuing your own education, but also want to include others in understanding the heritage. And Hispanics don't value education. This misconception comes from assumption based on economic statistics, but it's far from truth. Many Hispanic families prioritize education because they see that as a gateway to better life. So you've been navigating this field dominated by men. What has been the most challenging stereotype that you fought for?
Oh, that's so interesting that you mentioned the stereotypes, because I remember when I was finishing my bachelor's degree, I said right away, I need to get a master's. I have to. And a lot of people, not Latinos, would sometimes say, why do you need to do more? Isn't this enough? You already, like, I was already a director at a university. And I said, you don't understand. I have to make sure that people take me seriously, and education is my ticket. Education is how I'm going to prove that. And so for us, a lot of us Latinos, it's very important. I can tell you, my mom, one of the things that she told all three of us is, you need to get your degree. And my sister, I remember her getting her degree from the university and bringing it to the house and saying, here, you have it, it's yours. And so we do value education a lot. I mean, it's one of the reasons I moved to the US, was because my mom wanted us to have a better education. And going to your question about stereotypes, I think one of the biggest ones is that, and because I have so many identities, I think the intersectionality also adds to that. So it's not only that, Latinas don't belong in leadership roles, it's also that LGBTQ individuals don't belong in leadership roles. And so I've had to consistently push back on that assumption that I should change who I am and that I should fit into whatever mold was created before I was born. And that is an ongoing process, Beata. That is not something that I can tell you, okay, I did it once and I'm okay now. It happens constantly. And I can tell you that my journey has been about proving actually that authenticity and diversity are my strengths, not obstacles in leadership.
Well, you are trying to prove, and it sounds like you don't feel you are enough. And if you look at your dog, who I believe I can hear in the distance, he believes he's enough. So maybe we should just pause for a moment and sometimes think about what we have achieved, because you've been nominated to so many awards, and I'm wondering, when are you going to stop?
Yeah, no, I can tell you, I don't think that I'm not enough. It's not me. It's other people around me. And when I say I push back, I'm pushing back on that notion that they have about me. I have been on a spiritual journey, Beata, for many years now. And I understand now, and it has taken a lot of work. I understand now my value. I understand what I bring to the table. And I know that I am more than enough. The problem is when you go in environments where you have to prove that to other people because they don't believe that about you the moment you walk in. And so there is a lot that's connected to that. And I think that's sometimes what other people don't understand, that it's not that we don't believe it, it's that we have to constantly prove ourselves to other people because they don't believe it.
Well, I have to tell you, when you walked into that room on New York Stock Exchange, you owned it, Elaine. And I'm not just saying because, it's the fact that you came in and you started talking to everybody. And that's so I'm wondering whether it is a Latina trait, the fact that you can make the room by talking to everybody and schmooze your way around and really be comfortable
Yeah.
with that.
It's so interesting that you notice that, because that is not the norm, especially for Latinas. That is not the norm. One of the things that a lot of us hear growing up is calladita te ves más bonita, which means, you know, if you're quiet and if you don't call too much attention on yourself, you actually look prettier, and we want you to look prettier. So we want you to not make too much noise. That is what most of us hear growing up. For me, I've been through a process of unlearning all of the things that I heard growing up, that it was not my mom's fault because she didn't know any better. That's what they taught her. That's what she's teaching me. But you know, it gets to a generation where we have to break the cycle. And so for me, I had to learn that. I mean, it took a lot of work, and it all started with public speaking. I can tell you that my public speaking courses, my public speaking training helped me a lot in being comfortable being in front of people, being comfortable speaking with others, being comfortable being uncomfortable. I think that's the biggest lesson for me. I also, over the years, understood the power of networking. I understand the power of personal branding. There are so many little pieces. And I think sometimes when people look at me, they would say, oh, wow, Elaine has all of this, but they don't see what happened behind the scenes to get me there. Just to give you an example, I was a very shy child. Shy. I mean, I would not, people would come visit and I would hide in my room. And so it took years for all of that to change and for me to be comfortable being uncomfortable, which is exactly what I would recommend to anyone. Like that feeling comes in where you're like, oh my God, I'm in a new space. I don't know anyone. Well, let that feeling be there. It's fine. Just keep moving forward. What is your intention for the day? And my intention, other than connecting with you and your husband, was connecting with other amazing human beings and learning about their journey. And so I'm very intentional with the things that I do, but it's been a process. It's not something that happens overnight. And I know that a lot of Latinas struggle with that. And I think the number one reason we struggle is because the way we are raised, in a way, we're told not to show off. Like, you don't want to come across like you're showing off. You know, you want to be humble. You want to be humble all the time. And so we don't spend the time sharing our greatness, which is what I learned. Self-advocacy is something that I had to learn because I didn't know that I could speak for myself. I was like, you know, my manager will speak on my behalf. And I learned sometimes they don't. You have to speak for yourself and you have to advocate for yourself. It was a lot of work. It took a lot of work for me to get there. Yeah.
Well, it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort to show your authentic self. And I just remember recently I watched this interview with a comedian who talked about, you know, everybody's jealous because I've got so many gigs and I'm invited to this channel, this television, this stage, but nobody was jealous of me drafting thousands of pages of stunts and jokes, and that's madness, but that is what is required to get to where I am at now.
Yeah.
So that's really resonates with me, Elaine, as well, because I used to be a very introverted, shy mouse in the corner, sitting in the corner, and that's very much how Polish girls are raised as well, which is not really a trait for a leadership, because the thought-provoking leader is the one who is, as you said, self-advocating for others, for themselves. And you definitely shine the light into other Latinas and other from your community and beyond. So we've often talked about the importance of authenticity in leadership in an industry where diversity is still lacking. How have you balanced being true to yourself while navigating spaces that weren't designed for someone like you?
Yeah, it was a struggle. I want to keep saying that, Beata, because I think sometimes we talk about the good things and everybody sees me when I do an interview and the content that I share, but we don't talk about the struggles enough. We don't talk about, like you just mentioned about this comedian. No one sees what happened. No one sees the nights that I was working on 5X Minority and no one was paying attention to it. And so I felt a lot of pressure to conform to traditional expectations of leadership and what a female leader should look like and how she should dress and how her hair should look. Mind you, I have like very curly natural hair. And for many years, I would not show it. I did not want people to see my natural curls. I wanted to dress like them. And so I had to wear a suit, and sneakers was out of the question. I could never wear that. And so, I think I realized that I was trying to fit into a mold that was not created for me. And it was exhausting. It was exhausting. And that's one of the reasons I have so much hope for the next generation, Beata, because you and I have spoken about this many times in the past. They're paving their own road ahead of them, and they are deciding what they want it to look like. They know what they want companies to look like. They know how they want to feel when they walk into the workplace. They're doing their homework and looking at the leadership team and the roles and what are companies doing about diversity and inclusion. So I can tell you that not being myself was limiting my potential. I mean, there is so much research that shows the power of diversity. I had two versions of Elaine. I had a version of Elaine that was outside of work. And then when I entered the workplace, I had a different version originally because I did not share that I was a member of the LGBTQ plus community. And it was very scary for me. I remember going into meetings and not feeling sure if I can share my authenticity with that particular group around that particular table. It is very exhausting to have to think so much about the things you could share. I remember having to use the word partner when people were talking about their weekends. What did they do over the weekend? And I was like, oh my God, if I say wife, I'm going to scare a lot of people right now. So it took me a while to be comfortable and embrace who I was, my background, my values. And I discovered that authenticity became a source of strength, actually. And that's why you see me right now. But it took a lot of work to get there. And so I do not want anyone to feel that way when they're working with me. And that's, you mentioned, how does it shape my leadership style? I've been through it myself, and I know how it feels. And I know how much the company doesn't benefit from someone who is brainstorming about a problem and is worried about the words that they need to use. And I think companies need to pay more attention to that, because in the end, they actually suffer from that.
Well, it brings me to this book by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, that talked about the fact that we need to lean in and feed the tech culture, whereas you, with your initiative 5X Minority, is carving your own path. So I'm wondering, why did you set up your initiative, and where are you going on that path?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because what happens with a lot of women, especially, is that you need to find a way in. You need to find a way in. And sometimes in order to find a way in, you have to adapt to whatever is happening there. And once you're in, you can change. You can make changes once you're in. But I understand both sides, and I don't want people to think, oh, I'm going to be myself today and everything that I want will happen. That's not how it happens sometimes. And I want to be transparent about that. Companies are different. Companies have different cultures. And so I would recommend that you really do your homework before you go into a company, and you ask enough questions during the interview process so that you know it's a good fit for you. 5X Minority really started as a blog. I love writing. I know you know this. I love writing. And I wanted to share my experiences. I was learning so much as a Latina in the workplace. And I realized that a lot of my friends did not know the things that I was learning. And I was like, well, why don't we share this more often? Why is this a secret that only a few people know? I also know, Beata, that we have this, this small thinking sometimes that leads us to believe that there is no room for more than one. And what happens a lot, especially for women sometimes, and I've seen this myself, is that when one makes it to the top, they don't want anybody else to make it to the top because there's only room for one. And I want to change that because there is room for more than one, for sure. I know that. And it's a change in mindset, and it's a change in the company culture. And so when I deliver my TEDx talk on the value of mentorship, I started getting so many messages and emails, and I was crying because a lot of women were saying, wow, Elaine, you're saying things that I really wish I heard in the past. You're actually a Latina, lesbian, and you made it to the C-suite. I have hope now that I think is possible for me. And that's one of the reasons I decided, you know what, maybe I cannot do a lot, but I have to do something. I have to do something. And I think that happens a lot with a lot of us, that we feel like there is nothing we can do. And if that's what you're thinking, just do something. Just start small, and you will be amazed at the difference that you can make. My passion now is to make sure that I can support other women, continue to mentor other women, and help them see what's possible for them. And a lot of that is a change in mindset, because we grow up hearing a lot of things that are not true. And so you have to learn how to question your thoughts and challenge whatever is in front of you at that moment. And it's not easy, but if you're intentional, you can get there.
Well, so many thoughts here. You just jeopardized my next question. Anyway, tech has the power to solve some of the world's biggest problems, but it can also reinforce inequality. How do you think the tech industry can do better in closing the diversity gap, not just in hiring, but in shaping inclusive company cultures?
That's a great question. It's actually a big question, Beata.
I know.
From my 20 plus years working in technology, one of the things that I notice is that sometimes companies, I'm not talking about any company specific, but a lot of companies sometimes focus on short-term hiring practices and short-term hiring metrics instead of focusing on long-term cultural change. And so I think it starts with recruitment. I think if we can pay attention to that, and if we can make changes there, everything else will flow in. Of course, there is more work to do after that, but that's where I think we can start. We should be intentional about recruitment practices that target underrepresented groups. But it goes beyond creating environments where people can fit in, because like I mentioned, I don't want to fit in anymore. I want to be myself, and I want you to love me just as I am. I think companies can also, spend some time prioritizing mentorship and sponsorship opportunities. I don't think we speak enough about sponsorship. And that's one of the things that helped me the most, is the fact that I had a sponsor. Professional development, that must be a priority when we're putting together our budget requests every year. And then having clear paths for advancement and that are accessible to everyone, regardless of their background. I think there is a lot of work to do. There's a lot of unconscious bias. And so it's not a one-time solution. And it takes a lot of work. And I think that's what's difficult, that sometimes companies focus on it once. And a lot of women in tech leave after just being in tech for a few years because of that same problem. They were able to make it in, but then we forget about them, and we don't provide them with the support that they need or spend the time understanding what works for them. Even when you think about engagement and you think about rewarding employees, there is no one size fits all. I have intentional conversations with my teams to find out, what does reward look for you? Some people want money, some people want visibility, people want different things. And I think we have to stop with putting everyone in a box, which is something that I know what it feels like, and just having conversations, open conversations, and listening to them so that we can have, different voices at the table, and different people sharing their background and perspectives, you want the company to look like your customers. And our customers, today look very different from what some of the companies look like. So I think we're making a lot of progress, and there is more work to do, and we'll continue to do that.
Well, one of the things that many key stakeholders are talking about is the fact that diversity and inclusion is becoming kind of a buzzword for especially big corporations. And one of the problem is that quite often diversity and inclusion falls into the lap of HR department. It's not really impacting the culture that much, and especially given the fact that many managers responsible for diversity and inclusion report to HR, not so much they are not really in a decision-making position. So what would you advise to a CEO if you were sitting in his position, and how he should rethink his strategy? Because you've talked about how you're working with your company currently and your past companies. So what would you do differently if you were in charge, let's say, New York Stock Exchange?
I love your question, Beata, and I'm going to change it a little bit because you said CEO and you said his position. So I would say her position.
Absolutely.
I would advise her to have intentional conversations with the leadership team. I think that it's a lot to expect one person, the person that has the DEI title, to fix all the problems in a company. It's just unrealistic. It will not happen. I believe that we can do so much more if we go down to the management level and we make every manager understand the importance of diversity and inclusion. It starts with education. I think sometimes people don't even understand why this is important. What are the statistics that demonstrate that diverse teams bring more actually funding to a company, revenue to a company? And so I would advise her or him to focus on the data, to follow the data, to educate everyone, and to make it every manager's role. And I know that what I need to do for my teams. I'm not waiting for HR to come and tell me what's important, because I see it as part of my role. And a lot of managers don't see it that way, and they don't have the time. So let's make the time to make sure that we can have some resources available to them so that they understand what's in it for them, so that we can get buy-in. Because if you just tell people what to do, that's not going to be helpful either. Also, as a CEO, I would recommend him or her to serve as role models. I know that I look up to my CEO, and it's important that they can lead by example, right? Which is what I try to do. And I say try because we're not perfect. I am not perfect. What I know is that if I make a mistake, I will say it. I will speak about it. I will be transparent, and I would try to do better. Like Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. I'm not perfect. I'm very imperfect, but I'm not going to hide my imperfections and act like everything is okay when I know that it's not. I'd rather move forward with good intentions. And if I make a mistake, I would say, you know what? Thank you so much for bringing that up. I did not see it. And then make a change after that. So it's not impossible. It takes a lot of work, and we need to make the time to make all of that happen. But leading by example will make a huge difference, because we're all looking up to them.
Well, I gave a bad example because we know that New York Stock Exchange is doing great under the leadership of Lynn Martin. And we've seen some amazing talents. I enjoyed a conversation with three female leaders from New York Stock Exchange. And if we are talking about leaders, there is a great time now to bring quotation by Sonia Sotomayor, U.S. Supreme Court judge, the first Latina and third woman to serve as an Associate Justice to the Supreme Court of the United States, who was born in New York City to Puerto Rican parents. So she says it is important for all of us to appreciate where we come from and how that history has really shaped us in ways that we might not understand. So, as technology is making thrives and we have now AI and everybody's got this AI obsession after blockchain and Bitcoin obsession, I see there is a big threat because, as we know, there are systemic biases, and if we put bias in, we get bias out. And as we know, AI is learning from our language, and it's not really that inclusive. It's stained by bias. What do you see as a good way forward to develop AI or language models based technology?
Yeah. Well, I think it's similar to everything else. Make sure we have diverse voices at the table. Make sure that we have women involved. And if you look at the media and if you look around, the biggest companies are all led by men. We need to help amplify the voices of women who are working in AI. And as companies and also government and nonprofits, we have to make sure that they collaborate to bring resources and make them more accessible. We need to focus on education and upskilling for our employees and also building networks that provide access to opportunities. I tell everyone I know, stop waiting. You have to start playing with all these new systems and understand how they work. And the beauty of it right now, Beata, is that there is so much information available out there that even if your company doesn't provide the resources, all you need is YouTube. All you need is Google. They have access, free access to a lot of these applications online, ChatGPT, any of these programs. And we have to make sure that we focus on building skills that complement automation, such as, critical thinking and creativity and emotional intelligence. I think in the world of AI, what people call soft skills, which I hate because they're not soft, are going to become even more important, especially for leaders and people in management positions. Those traits are going to be in high demand moving forward. So yes, learn about AI, understand what's happening. I think it's going to change a lot because it removes barriers. It's not only a group of people that have access to a ChatGPT or Perplexity. It's open to everyone. And so I'm hoping that minority groups and Latinos are taking the time to understand how it works. There are a lot of free opportunities for training and internships and development programs, and I share some of those on my LinkedIn account. And though they are specifically targeting underrepresented communities. And so there is no excuse for you to say, I'm not able to do it because I don't have access to it, because there is access to it everywhere. And you can educate yourself by spending, even if it's, an hour a week, half an hour every day, find a video, follow someone who is talking about it and make the time to understand what's an LLM, how does that affect my community, and how can I make my work better? Because what we know is that AI is not going to replace people. People who know AI will replace people. So make sure that you understand what's happening so that you can get ahead.
And you can use these tools to really enhance not just the mundane task, because we talked about it just 2 episodes ago with Giovanna, who talked about humanity and AI and application and how to stay truth and really build better products. And one of the things we talked about was how not only the mundane task can be taken away from us, but also we can enhance our great tasks that we are capable of doing by improving it slightly or making it faster. So, Elaine, let's put AI aside. You've been named one of the top 100 women in tech, but there are still so few women, especially women of color, at the executive level in the industry. You talked about what you would advise the people at the C-suite. We talked about how to have better representation.
Mm.
So one thing I wanted to ask you as a leader to a leader, what would you do if you woke up every day and you wanted to become a leader and wanted to be recognized? What would be the Elaine 20 years ago who started her journey? I'm sure there are some improvements that you would make. What would you advise Elaine to do?
Oh, what would I advise Elaine to do? Oh, that is an interesting question. Okay. You know what? Thinking back, I would probably say what makes you different is your superpower. Um, Beata, it took me years to embrace my accent, to embrace the fact that I was the only woman in the room. And I, for many years, was very upset about that. And it is actually an advantage. If you know how to use it well, right? I remember, especially, coming to this country at the age of 17 and not speaking English. I remember wanting to fit in so bad. I wanted to belong so bad. I was changing the person that I was. And not only that, I feel like I got a new identity because Elaine is a name that I heard for the first time when I moved to this country. I spent the first 17 years of my life here in Elaine, and I did not know that my name sounded different. And so I had to embrace a new name and react to it, which I feel like gave me like a new identity that I did not have. So what I would say to that, Elaine, is you don't have to belong. You could be yourself and you can belong to yourself and everything else will follow. You have the right to be in the room. Your contributions matter. Your voice matters. I was very shy, like we said earlier, and I was afraid of using my voice. I was really afraid of speaking up, especially because my accent was so strong. I felt ashamed for years for having an accent because I know that, people were staring at my lips because they couldn't understand what I was saying. And I was so conscious of it that I decided to stop talking. I stopped talking. And so
So, I'm wondering because you didn't insist on being called Elena. You just wanted to lean in. Would you tell yourself to insist on being called Elena?
that's a good question. Let me think about that.
Because you see, a problem with my name is when I came to London first time, everybody had struggled. Eventually, I was called B. And the thing is, my husband actually made a point of no, you're not B, you're not Sylvia, because that's my middle name. I wanted to make life easier for everybody else. And it's again this concept of leaning in. Whereas, it's so the beauty of our names is that we can actually teach others. It can be difficult to call you Elena, but actually it's part of your identity. You're different. You're not just Elaine, you're Elena.
Yeah, that's a good question. I probably would have taken the time to teach others how to say my name, and I would probably say it enough times that it would become the norm. Beata, it's so hard for me to think about that right now because I'm not there. And so, like you, I am someone who back then did not want to inconvenience other people, which is one of the reasons I didn't want to worry. I had so many things to worry about. My name could not be another thing that I have to worry about. So I think it would have probably giving me more stress. So right now I'm in the middle. I am actually not sure. I don't mind, Elaine. I feel that I had so many other things that I was fighting that if I could avoid one, then it's okay. Just call me Elaine. But I do understand the importance of, your name and your identity, and people knowing who you are. So I would have to go back then. I don't know. I'm still, it's a good question. I'm still thinking about it.
We let's forget about the past. We are not going there. We are not looking back. Let's think about the future. And definitely that's something that we want to talk about, because it's the Hispanic Heritage Month. We enjoy it till the 15th of October.
Mhm.
So, what do you believe is the biggest missed opportunity for tech companies when it comes to leveraging the talents and perspectives of minorities and women? You mentioned the fact that we can contribute to growing the pie, because women are, they consist of over 50 152, around 52% of population. We are decision makers when it comes to buying cars, for example. We
Yes.
are decision makers when it comes to buying groceries. Somehow it is not translating into the corporate world. So I'm thinking about the opportunities for company, why they need to embrace the change.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you look at the data, everything shows that it is better. It puzzles me sometimes that as a CEO, you 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 don't see it or you don't want to see it. Or maybe it's more difficult than that. I am not a CEO, so I don't want to make assumptions. I'm sure it's a very difficult job. I think it's a missed opportunity, definitely, for tech companies in failing to recognize the huge value that diverse perspectives bring to innovation, problem solving, collaboration. Especially women and minorities, they have unique insights, like you mentioned. Like, we spend a lot of money. You want to listen to our opinion because we are the ones who are going to decide if we're buying your product or not. Their unique insights, how they shape their lives and experiences, which can lead to more creative solutions and better understanding of a diverse customer base, which you want to be paying attention to. So I feel like many companies, in a way, sometimes still see diversity as a checkbox, and I want them to see it more as a strategic advantage. It's a huge advantage. And I have hope because I know a lot of companies are starting to see that. When you invest in diverse hiring, but you fail to create environments where those hires that you just brought in can thrive, you're actually not helping yourself. You're not helping yourself. And we want to make sure that we can support them into getting into leadership roles. So it's a business advantage. And I think that companies are starting to see it. I think all of this talk about what's DEI and how is that hurting us, forget about that. Let's treat human beings as human beings, right? Let's treat people with love. Let's understand where they're coming from. I don't care about what you call it. Let's be humans with other humans, and you will see how much change is going to come, and how much you're going to have a stronger financial performance at the end of the year.
Absolutely. And speaking of being human, Eleanor Roosevelt once said that you never know a true strength of a woman until you put her in hot water. So I'm wondering, Elaine, how are you in hot water? How are you brewing? Because, everybody's got this imagination of Sofia Vergara as Gloria in Modern Family, running around and shouting and so on. I wonder, how is Elaine dealing with hot water?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that maybe because of my spiritual journey, I'm a very calm person, as you can see. My teams will tell you the same thing. Sometimes they ask me, Lane, why don't you get upset? Well, I get upset. It's not that I don't. I have a lot of tools to deal with it now. I can tell you that over the years, I've dealt with a lot of things that includes not being heard, my ideas being dismissed, and even myself just feeling imposter syndrome, feeling that I don't belong in the room. And I think all of that has, like a hot tea, it has brewed a sense of confidence and purpose in me. And it's one of the reasons that I am now committed to creating spaces where other women don't have to face all the things that I had to face moving up to the C-suite. It's not easy, and there are a lot of challenges. And I'm hoping that maybe in the future we can have more conversations about the challenges so that people can actually see, this is what happens. It's not a dream, it's not flowers, it's a lot of work. I can tell you, Beata, that I had to stay late and I had to work harder than anyone else around me, because I knew that as a Latina and as a member of the LGBTQ community and as a female, if I didn't do that, people would not take me seriously. People would not pay attention to what I was saying. And so it's that what I'm focusing on now, and making sure that I share my wisdom, which is my wisdom, is what worked for me. I'm not imposing what worked for me on anyone else. I like to share so that people can think about it and decide, is that something that is relevant to me? Does it resonate with me? And then you make your decision for yourself.
Speaking about wisdom that resonates, what is your life lesson quote and how does it shape you as Elaine of today?
Yes, so I love this author who recently passed away. His name is Dr. Wayne Dyer, and I live by his quote because it changed my life. It says, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." And one of the things that I learned, Beata, is that the way I was looking at myself was not helping me early on in my career, and I had to change the way I saw myself so that others can see me differently. Because one of the things that I learned over the years is that we teach people how to treat us. We teach people how to treat us. And a lot of that comes from the way you see yourself. And so that is a quote that it's inside my heart. It's embedded in here. And it has really helped me a lot over the years.
That also ties in neatly with what you talked about mentorship and sponsorship, because I noticed recently you met on the mentoring path with some gentleman who probably, does not realize how much he's got to learn from us, because men usually or people who are mentors usually take it as a one-way path. They're gonna teach you, but it's quite the opposite, because mentor and mentee route is a two-way street, isn't it?
Always. I've always said that. And, sometimes I feel that I learn more from my mentees than they're learning from me. I'm sure that's not the case, but I am fascinated by the next generation, Beata. The things that I hear them saying, thinking about going back in time, I look at myself when I was their age. There was no way I can say the things they're saying today. So I'm very proud of the change that is coming. It's definitely a two-way street, and I always see it in that way and say it from day one so that we can both be on the same page and understand that, this is a safe space. We're going to have conversations. Tell me about your goals. And during the process, in the end, I always end up learning a lot more from them. Maybe it's just my opinion, but definitely a two-way project, I would say, because it doesn't really end when the mentoring ends. I'm connected to many of my mentees. I'm connected to all my mentors. And so it's a relationship that lasts a lifetime.
So, Elaine, it's time for you to look at your mentees and think about that. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Exactly.
So it's not you learning more from them. They are learning more from you. Because
I think we're learning from each other, Beata.
Absolutely. So that's another quote that ties in neatly with my quote that I always use during our show, which is, when you look at positives, The positives get more positive. Now, let's go into the number one book that you recommend everybody should read and you wish you read before you started your career.
Yes. Oh God, I have so many. Let me think of one. And I would probably go with The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. That is a book. And by the way, the four agreements are: be impeccable with your word, which is my favorite agreement. Number one, be impeccable with your word. Number two, don't take anything personally. And they sound so simple, but they are so powerful. Number three, don't make assumptions. Oh my God. If I could speak for hours about each one of these. And then the fourth one, always do your best. I can tell you that I wish I read that book earlier. I think I would have avoided a lot of getting upset. Maybe because I was making assumptions, or maybe because I wasn't impeccable with my word. I think it really would have avoided a lot of misunderstandings and issues early on if I had read that book years earlier.
And frustrations, definitely.
Yes, a lot of frustrations that come with, making assumptions sometimes. Yeah.
But let's forget about frustrations and imagine that you could go anywhere and invite anybody to a private breakfast. Who would you invite and where would you go to?
A private breakfast. I'm going to assume someone who's alive. So I'm going to think about someone who's alive today. And that would probably be Michael Singer. Michael Singer is an American author and a motivational speaker. And he was a software developer, believe it or not. And he embodies everything that I believe in. You could be working in technology and be a spiritual leader. I love this human being so much. Where would we meet? Nature, for sure. It would have to be probably in a forest or something like that. And I would want to talk about maybe understanding better how I am the observer of my life and not be in it so much all the time, trying to control everything that happens around me. That is the path that I'm on right now. And I would love to ask him a few questions. He wrote two of my favorite books. One is The Untethered Soul, and the other one is The Surrender Experiment. I don't know if I mentioned this before, Beata, but for New Year's, instead of resolutions, I select a word of the year. And one year, my word was surrender. And I read his book and I spent the whole year practicing how to surrender to the things that are happening in front of me. And that doesn't mean not having power, but knowing the things you can control and the things you cannot. So I would definitely want to meet Michael Singer.
Surrender. So you surrender to some circumstances and you also change your view on them and bring them as positives rather than negatives. That's a very thoughtful message for today for our listeners, and I did not expect anything like that, soul searching Latina today.
I know they're learning something new about me through your podcast today, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So what would you tell us? What would be your final thoughts for those who are listening to our podcast, our live stream, and what would be your action points to them to really make this conversation meaningful?
Yes. I'll share a few things. The first one for me is what I call collect evidence. And it's something that really helped me a lot in my career, especially when dealing with imposter syndrome. And I got this tip from one of my counselors, and it's called collect evidence. And what you do is you create a document. Mine is in a Dropbox, and you write down all of your accomplishments, regardless of how small they are. Write them down every day. You could do this every day. When something happens, when you finish a project, just go to your document and write it down. You could do it once a week or once a month. I remember At the beginning, I used to put it on my calendar every Friday at the end of the day. And I would reflect on the week and write down my accomplishments. And it would say, update, collect evidence, document. Do it whenever you want to. I don't care. Just do it. And one of the reasons I recommend it is because whenever I feel imposter syndrome coming back, I open that document and I remind myself how amazing I am and all the things that I've accomplished. It also helps you with your yearly review with your manager. If you want to come and bring a list of all the things you've completed, it helps you when you're asking for a raise. It can help in so many ways. So I will start with that. The second one would say it's imperative that you learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. It's a must. You have to. I remember the first time I did public speaking. I couldn't sleep the night before. I couldn't eat the morning of. I was so scared. I mean, you would not believe it. And so I had to learn that the feeling of fear will be there and it's not going to go away. So why not make it your friend? Why not let it stay with you and move forward with it? And the more you do that, the more you practice, the easier it gets. So even having a meeting and not being sure on what you're saying, just practice being uncomfortable and own your voice. Be unapologetically yourself. The right people will follow when you do that.
Collect evidence, progress over perfection. These are the farewell messages from Elaine Montilla. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and wisdom and such a thought-provoking conversation today, Elaine. Your work is not only transforming the digital landscape, the Hispanic landscape, but also paving the way for more sustainable future. We're all living here today feeling totally inspired, Elaine. And even though it is a recorded conversation, we can't get the questions from the audience or comments from the audience today. I definitely feel it was a very inclusive conversation. People can look up Elaine. She's on LinkedIn and very active on 5xminority.com. And that's it from episode 157 of the PhD live stream with Elaine Montilla. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Women on IT and turn on notifications to be alerted once a video has been released. Next week, we are coming to another Hispanic powerhouse. This time we are going to have host Myrto, who is joining us from Haiti. Thank you so much. As always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking Only and goes, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, as Maya Angelou is giving us this message. Today is your future. Today is your time to hack positivity you want. Thank you.